Hello, Star Wars fans. Hey, you know there's just 122 days until Christmas 2021. And last night on the Tatooine show, Star Wars only host, he broke that Mandalorian will end with season 3. And then, of course, Meg gave us a video this morning. And the first video I watched this morning was Jason Ward's. And Jason, thank you so much for jumping in to talk about this with us. And the Mandalorian potentially. Oh, Jason was here and he's gone. Hopefully he'll be right back. I think he's having video trouble. It was locked up there for just a second. So we'll watch for Jason to drop back in. Again, the news is, or the leak, the rumor, however you want to put that. Meg, it's all Jason's before posting as well. Yeah, Jason did a nice job this morning. And I asked him if he had joined because he has a little bit of detail to add to that, and he put it in the chat last night during Star Wars Only's discussion. But it adds a little bit more, a little. Oh, there he is. He's actually moving. There you go. There's Jason.
I think I'm here now. How's it going, guys?
Oh, thanks for joining, Jason. Appreciate it. And we've got a lot of the regulars in our chat. Good to see you, X-Wing, Meg, of course, Darth Chaos. We've got a lot of folks. But look, this kind of broke last night during Star Wars Only's Tatooine show. And you added some. Oh, well, first of all, just a summary of the story is that the Mandalorian will end as a show after season 3. And the information you had to add was that the leases, there's something about the lease.
Yeah. Back in the day when I first learned where they were going to be filming it, one of the things that I got a lead on was how many years they were going to have it for. And it was about 4.5 years. And when you look at when they started, it doesn't really leave any time for there to be another season, like in that period of production time. So I was like, yeah, that kind of adds up. And it doesn't, I don't think it means that they won't be filming there anymore. For all I know, they're going to renew tomorrow or whatever. But I think it says something about what the original scope was and the hope for that. And one other thing, if it's okay, I could throw in here that I forgot to put in my video and I forgot to say anywhere else was back in the day, I made an article about what the premise of the show was. And the premise of the show was the restoration of Mandalore, number 1, and he's protecting a boy. I thought it was a boy. And not Grogu. So when you look at where we ended, the dark sabers, the big I don't know, what do you call it? Like it's the issue. And so I could just kind of see him getting that like King Conan ending, you know. He has the dark saber, Mandalore is restored. It's kind of a cool story. He's a foundling who becomes that. So I can see that being the end. I buy it.
Yeah, I could see that as well. And then, of course, that doesn't mean that Din Djarin has to die. As you just said with King Conan, it doesn't mean the death of the hero. It just means the end of that story. And if we see the Mandalorian as a story, then that story concludes. And as I've mentioned, and you've referenced, and I picked up from an article that Kathleen Kennedy was doing an interview with the Direct. And in that article, she mentioned Jon Favreau based the story off of Paper Moon. And we've referenced this lots of times here, but that story ends with the child in the story returning back to the grifter. And right. The parallel, of course, being Din and Grogu. So you could definitely see Grogu go with Luke for a season, and at the end be back with the Mandalorian, back with Din Djarin, and that ends that story, right?
Yeah, I think it was Andy Signor who was saying that Grogu and Mando were back together in this season of the show. And I was like, that sounds like way fast. Like, why are they doing that? But if this is the last season, as Star Wars Only is reporting, then that makes sense because that's it, right? I mean, obviously it's not it for the characters. Like, I've seen a lot of like kind of doom and gloom kind of comments and stuff towards me, like it's really ending and it's over. And it's like, nah, they're gonna be all around. Star Wars isn't ending. Just this story arc is ending.
Right, right. So the thing that came to mind, and I went out and I got it so that we could play for everybody here. I'm sure you will recognize this, Jason. I'm going to play, and hopefully we won't get a copyright strike for the intro song here. But it leads to what could the next series be? And let me just play for you, and then we'll kind of bounce off of it.
People, let me tell you about my best friend. He's a warm-hearted person who loved me till the end. People, let me tell you about my best friend. He's a one-boy
Right.
Right.
So you think about
Mando's throwing Grogu.
Right. Right. They're out in the field. Right. It's
Jetpacking around.
Right. So exactly. So we could end up with the courtship of Grogu's father. Could be the follow up to the Mandalorian.
If you copyright strike Santa down, he'll become more powerful than you could possibly imagine.
I had to play that because many of the folks here aren't of age to even know what that show is.
I know it, but I barely know it. Yeah, I was thinking about you last night and your the Paper Moon thing, that conversation that we've had over the last couple of weeks, and I was like, on one hand, like I had two different scenarios in my brain, and one was like King Conan, like I said, he's Mandalore, and we know Mandalore is run or ruled by a just ruler who with a good moral compass or something like that, right? I thought the other way is, wouldn't it be cool if he just does a Luke Skywalker, throws the Darksaber down, him and Grogu essentially are just like, later guys, and they just take off. They're just like go to live, do their own thing, and have Grogu and Din Djarin camping trips or whatever.
right.
So
the courtship of Eddie's father, who was it's Bruce Banner, the actor played Bruce Banner in the Hulk. What's his name? I can't remember the actor's name.
Wait, like Luke Ferrigno?
No. To play Bruce Banner, not the Hulk.
Oh, sorry.
It was the Lou Ferrigno Hulk series.
Right.
But yeah, the actor that played Bruce Banner was Eddie's father. And there was this courtship of Eddie's father, and it was all about, their daily goings on, typical kind of Bill Bixby. That's it. Will Morgan got it for us.
Good work, Will.
Excellent job, Will. Bill Bixby is the guy. We've got some folks here that are old enough. Oh, certainly Star Wars MCU OG, right? He's old enough, even though. So it could be the courtship of Eddie's father kind of thing. You got Din Djarin and Grogu going on their way. It just gets a different. I'm gonna call it the courtship of Grogu's father. That's
or it would be kind of cool if it ended how every episode of the Hulk does, where he sounds like the backpack and there's like hitchhiking, on to the next one.
Got the backpack with Grogu sticking out,
Grogu.
That would be fantastic. That would be great. So yeah, I just don't know. Look at that, Meg. If I get to Santa's age, I'm Santa is actually a bit of an eternal, but I'm only 54. I'm sure Meg will make it to my age quickly.
They say Meg parties like Hendrix, so just turn her on to her stomach every time, she'll make it. True.
Mike Porter. I'm so old. I'm Bill Bixby's father. That's really good. No, uh, the point being, Din Djarin doesn't have to die to end the series. It's just that the series meets its story end, and we see where it goes from there. If, and I love the Conan the King, right? King Conan idea, because that was another start of a story. You had Conan, and then you had King Conan, and you could absolutely have the Mandalorian, and then Mandalore the Great, something
Right.
like that.
And I don't want to hang too much on this because it was like an off the cuff kind of interview question, but there was a moment when a reporter, I don't remember which outlet, asked Favreau about a Mandalorian movie. And
Right.
he's like, I wouldn't take it off the table. Like that would be a great way to, or a great place to take it maybe someday. And so if you do end up with him being Mandalore, that sets up for if there's some kind of actual big Mandalorian skirmish, a war or whatever, because they don't show up in the sequel trilogy. They're always like this force that should show up in these major battles or whatever. And on a side note, I had a friend who worked on Revenge of the Sith, and Lucas, at the end of Revenge of the Sith, started taking crew members out to dinner every night. As it was winding down, he would take like a cluster of them. And on the night that he took this friend of mine, he told them, he's like, originally the Mandalorians were supposed to show up at the end of Return of the Jedi. They were supposed to be the force that the rebels brought, and there was going to be this big Mandalorian war. And he's like, maybe I'll do that in my cartoons. But it's like that. There you go. Like that would be a way of getting into something where we could have a bigger scope than what the TV show currently has.
Yeah, I think, and I agree with Meg. I don't know that, and I get what X-Wing saying about having a guy become ruler and all of the political, social stuff that's going on, and that they wouldn't do that. I actually think they would do that. But I get his point. But and Bo-Katan's already held that position and lost it. So I think that that Din Djarin will end up in that role, and that's sort of the point of it. But I'm okay if they were to put Bo-Katan on there, and we put Din and Grogu out on the road hitchhiking their way through the galaxy. That'd be fine.
My fear is that they bring Sabine in, and then she's just like, oh, he's great, because Sabine always knows what's right or something like that. Because there kind of has to be like a lot of I don't know, like friction. Because remember when Maul became Mandalore for that time, like that's what made her bounce. That's what made what's her name, Katie Sackhoff's character, leave. She was like, nah, this guy's an outsider.
Right.
And so I imagine there's going to be friction with him being a foundling.
And I think a lot of people put too much weight on that dark saber. The dark saber does not grant you leadership of Mandalore. It gives you a claim, but there are lots of things that can give you a claim, that being one of them.
Yeah.
The person who is the leader of Mandalore doesn't have to own it, nor does conquering the person who have it automatically bestow upon the winner the rulership of Mandalore. And you're right, that's where Sabine and them, they broke off, because it's like that saber isn't just, it doesn't bequeath that role to somebody.
Right. Yeah. I think what do you, that's what's kind of weird though, is like what we saw in Clone Wars is it doesn't necessarily have to mean that, but it does mean that you're going to fight for it. You're going to, and it's like, so, I don't see him killing Katie Sackhoff. You know what I mean? I don't see that happening. And then, and I'll also say, I mean, based off of, some of the credible aspects of the Rangers of the New Republic spin-off series, we know that there was the intention of there being an episode with her and Gina Carano's character. So how do you become Mandalore and then become a space cop? space cop and the queen of Mandalore or whatever, the ruler of Mandalore. That doesn't add up. I think that is actually a pretty telling story element of how this season probably goes.
The more I think about it, and I go back up, I got to give credit to where credit's due. Ducky mentioning Sabine. The more I think about Sabine taking over Mandalore, the more I think that's something that could happen. Because she won the Darksaber and she gave it to Bo-Katan to be the ruler. But so she's already rightfully won it in combat.
Yeah.
Should it be bequeathed to the sword, right? The Darksaber be given to Sabine? Sabine could lay claim to the rulership of Mandalore, because at this point, Din Djarin has made no claims whatsoever. He doesn't even want the sword. He's like, here, take it. No, okay, you need to win it in battle. I yield. Here, like, now you just won it because I yielded. So, what do you need me to do to get rid of this thing? And Bo-Katan wouldn't take it.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of the Mandalorian Excalibur in a way, and it's one of those weapons where you have to be like worthy of it, like you're supposed to be. But as we know in Star Wars, it doesn't necessarily. It's not Excalibur in that sense where it has to be, because like what's his name, Jon Favreau's character from Clone Wars, that guy was not an honorable guy, and he had it. It was his. So anyways, where I'm going with this is, yeah, I think the fact that both Sabine and Din, they don't want it makes them worthy of it in the end. And Katie Sackhoff's character wanting it, I think, is kind of a problem, at least in the general poetry of Star Wars, mostly.
Meg, I want Grogu to have a bunch of siblings somewhere. A bundle of Grogus, as the French would say.
I know. I like when I like in the episode when the lady at Mos Eisley is like, "Hey, if you get any more, I'll buy one."
Right. Right. And now Will coming in with his theory. Imagine Omega grown wearing the white proto armor, right? And because Omega does have a claim to Mandalorian roots, the same as Boba Fett does. They're exactly the same. So Omega could come in and say, "Yeah, I'm Mandalorian, white armor, get the Darksaber," and Omega could be the next ruler of Mandalore. There's a twist for you.
Yeah, with as many characters, with as much Mandalorian exploration as they've done on screen, I will say if the series ends at season 3, in terms of Mandalorian stories and the amount of characters that are going to be intersecting related to it, I see that complicated skirmish or whatever continuing on in a lot of stories down the road.
Right. And I've seen Meg's comments. Meg, I do hope you were feeling better. I saw you saying that you didn't feel well. Hope that you get the rest you need, and look forward to talking to you on Friday. So Friday, Meg and I will be doing a live stream, kind of wrapping up the week in news, and we'll talk about this as well. But yeah, I don't think we'll have a very long stream today, and I'm sure you'll be talking about it more on your show later today, Jason.
Yeah, for a bit.
Yeah. And so please go subscribe to Star Wars, MakingStarWars.net, the YouTube channel, the website, and look for Jason's discussion of it later. But I did want to bring it up and wanted to bring Jason in because of your perspective on that lease and how it lines up. And just to touch base again on how it could be, there's the bit about Giancarlo Esposito saying there were 4 seasons.
Yeah, what did you think about that? I got a lot of kind of, not, I shouldn't say flack, but the few people who were like, I don't know about that, man. That was the thing that people were like, I don't know about that.
Yeah, Well, you got to remember that Ming-Na Wen told in an interview that all her scripts said like 301, 302, 303. And so she was assuming it was the Mandalorian season 3, like all the way through.
Right.
Until some point she realized, like halfway through the season, wait a second, this is the Book of Boba Fett show. It's not Mandalorian. And so if the Book of Boba Fett is that Mandalorian season 2.5 or whatever like it's been kind of described as, then Mandalorian season 3 is sort of that season 4, and it lines up with that lease. It all fits together very nicely. And as Meg put in her video this morning, Star Wars only came out with this from the source that was already proven to be right before. And so she tends to believe that it's more likely true than not. So I'm willing to put a lot of weight into it as well. Not willing to go all the way down to like it was released by one of the trades, but I am willing to say this is likely the last season of the show that we know as The Mandalorian. And
Right.
The next show, The Courtship of Grogu's Father, I'm absolutely up for. And I'll just put that in the background again.
And now we need BJ and the Bear with Chewbacca.
Right. BJ and the Bear with Chewbacca. Right. So, we'll put that in the background. We got it playing in the back. It's, if you haven't seen The Courtship of Eddie's Father, it was a 60s show. I believe I'd have to look at it. And
I think so.
Yeah.
Early 70s at the latest.
Right. Bill Bixby was younger. It was, and then he had a foster son, or no, it was his son, right? And their mom died, right? His mom died, and
right.
So we had Eddie was the kid, and it's a courtship of Eddie's father. It was
that thing you were talking about with the season 3 episodes of Book of Boba masquerading as the season 3 of Mandalorian. I think it also explains the highly sensationalized Grace Randolph scoop that the third season was changing and Homeboy was mad about it and it was taking a new direction. And I think it explains how that story was sensationalized, which is very telling, but also that it was rooted in truth, probably.
Yeah, and Josh Lucas keeps talking about how Grace's story had truth in it, and he'd heard a good bit of it. And then we've seen some evidence of different things involved in that. And I've actually talked to some folks who said, look, it was a much bigger deal inside Lucasfilm than it was even reported. And I'm not at liberty to go into more detail than that either. But so if there's truth underneath, right, where there's enough smoke, there was a fire. There was definitely a fire of some sort. The details aren't out there to be shared. But
what cracked me up was before that, like a year before, there was a contract negotiation with the guy who plays Mando. I'm drawing a blank. I recall names is dead at this.
Pedro Pascal.
Yeah, he was negotiating that contract because they got it like temporary. He came in late and it was fast. I got the scoop on that one because of how weird it was. And then for season 2, he was like, he wanted his face in it all the time. And so they were making it sound like that was coming in the future. That happened in the past. That already happened. That's what I find that whole thing interesting. But also but would Giancarlo, would he have, because they're making it, the way he spoke, I just got the vibe he knew like story elements to it. And that's where I go. That's where I see the people who are like, I don't know that he would think that, like, because he did think it was 4 seasons.
Well, there's something else to be said. And Ronnie, Josh Lucas is the Den of Nerds Live. He is the host of that channel. So Josh Lucas, that's who I mean. Not George Lucas, not George Lucas's son, but rather just the host of the Den of Nerds Live.
It's actually George Lucas. He's like, I'm Josh Lucas.
Right?
He's white slave. Sorry.
And I should mention, like, I don't for a second believe that we're going to see an end to Din's story or to Grogu's story.
Right.
Not for a heartbeat. If we see the end of this series known as The Mandalorian after season 3, I think that's absolutely probable. There's no problem with that. And I've heard a lot of people talk about, well, if the story was, and I go back to, I keep doing it, I can't help it. I go back to Paper Moon. Paper Moon was a story. It had an end. Yeah. And if this was based off of Paper Moon, and it's loosely following that story arc, it has an end. And should The Mandalorian have the same sort of end, then it leads to this, what's the next phase? And my whole part about the courtship of Grogu's father. I don't know what it would be, but it will be continued stories of Din and Grogu in whatever context this season leads us to. That's all I mean.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with this idea right now. I think might even have been formulated in this chat, and it's this idea that Grogu has his Luke Bespin moment, where he's not with Mando, and as we come up to the culmination of the season, that he's going to have the vision that Mando needs him, and then that's when he leaves Luke, and Luke's like, all right, Luke and Grogu have their Bespin Luke, or their Yoda Luke moment where he leaves, and then that's I hope that's how they do it. I hope that's how they bring it back.
That would be really good, and it fits right in there, and wherever and I love your King Conan because it sets up perfectly, right? Like, we've got King Conan and Grogu's back with him. And whatever that story looks like, whatever they want to base that off of, if you guys have that in your mind, then it's not this concern about, Grogu losing a hand or or Din dying, anything like that. I think it could absolutely go on to just the next story. Right. And those stories are contained, and that fits in really, really well with what we've talked about regarding, say, the Ahsoka series. The Ahsoka series, I believe, is going to be just that follow-up to Rebels, where she goes to find Ezra Bridger. Mm-hmm. It'll culminate with at the end of that. Rangers could very well be a contained story. An Ezra and Thrawn spinoff series could be a contained story, all culminating in a movie event or another series. And each one of these then has a defined beginning and end. The Mandalorian, Book of Boba, the Book of Boba Fett, Ahsoka, and all the characters will continue on. It's just that those stories will be contained.
Yeah, and I would also add too that when you look at how we were first introduced to Mandalore in the Clone Wars, and in that series they're not really in the Republic. It's a really complicated, contentious kind of state of being for them. And if at the end of this series though Mandalore joins the new Republic, that then puts that line of, number one, it finishes the discontent of the Clone Wars era into all the way post Imperial, and then sort of closes that up for the characters who do live through that whole thing. Like, it does give those characters who lived in that time frame the ability to go through this whole bumpy ride and then to kind of reach atonement for the planet and the rest of the galaxy. And then of course it all falls apart because it's Star Wars, not Star Peace, and it just goes from there.
Right. So, and it opens up a sequel parallel to the sequel trilogy of what's going on Mandalore. Like, if Mandalore is reclaimed, as you started off this live stream with, that you had initially heard the Mandalorian was based on the reclamation of Mandalore.
Yeah, the restoration of Mandalore was the premise of the show.
Yeah, and if that's the case, and Mandalore is indeed restored, we haven't seen Mandalorians or the Mandalore, anything like that. And we certainly didn't see them during the sequel movies. There was not a Mandalorian to be seen. So what are they doing? Same with our the Grisk and the Thrawn and all of that, right? We don't know what's going on in other parts of the universe. The sequels tell us a very narrow story during a very short period of time. And I think a lot of people want to see the sequels retcon because they didn't like that story. Well, folks, it's a very narrow story during a short period of time. There are all kinds of other stories going on in the universe, on Mandalore, out in the Ascendancy, the Chiss. There's the doors are open to tell as many stories as you want. We're not limited to just this. And so when only one Kenobi says, do you think there's two factions of the Empire, a Thrawn one, a Gideon? If you read the Aftermath novels and such, you see that the Empire is fractionalized. And each of these Moffs have their sort of sphere of influence, and they're trying to bring them together. And certainly Thrawn would have his, and he might be trying to take over. If he does, where is he? If he doesn't, then people aren't going to be happy with Thrawn coming to that kind of end. My suspicion is he's going to take his toys and go back to Chiss, the Ascendancy, and the story will continue that way.
So this was probably around Comic-Con of, I think it was 2015. I think because I went to the Hasbro breakfast where they gave us the Stormtrooper from Force Awakens. And I was talking to some Lucasfilm cats, and some of them story group and some of them just production. And we were having this conversation, and the conversation was about how Flash Gordon has multiple empires. There are areas of space that are controlled by Ming, others that aren't, and you can go, and it's like you could have these sagas where these things coexist. And I keep wondering, this is probably far-fetched, but I keep wondering if we're going to get to Ahsoka and she's going to go to find Ezra and Thrawn, and we're going to find out that we've only been seeing one blade of grass in this larger field. And, and I could see some people with limited vision going, so none of this matters. No, it mattered there. And this is here. You know what I mean? It's a very like almost American centric, like how we draw the United States bigger on the map than it really is. It's like, no, everything here is important and everything there is important too.
right. I always think about that too. Like if the aliens, and if you want to learn more about aliens, you should watch makingstarwars.net. Right. Like
it's weird stuff.
Just saying.
I don't know how I feel about it, but I explore it.
Should the aliens come, will the globe be positioned with the United States, upright, or might they come in on an angle from another plane? Who knows? But you're right. Like we tend to look at history centric to ourselves. Yeah. And we've got folks here from the UK, like Star Wars Meg and others that are over in Europe. Mm-hmm. And we've got folks in South America. Like it tends to be true of anybody that the world is sort of in history is told from your perspective. And I think it's absolutely fair to say that there are other spheres going on out there. And even during World War II didn't cover the entire history of the entire Earth.
Right.
It covered a big portion of it, but there were other parts of the planet that were impacted differently, that were involved differently, that weren't in the major fighting, and just had a different place. So I think, especially for the sequels, we shouldn't pigeonhole like Star Wars to that story.
Right.
It's much, much bigger. And I think that's absolutely it. There's a Ducky says Thrawn got space whaled. I don't see him getting his fleet back. Well, the problem with that, Ducky, though, is in Mandalorian season 2 when Ahsoka is talking to what's her name, Morgan Elsbeth,
Ooh,
right?
good recall on that one. I couldn't have pulled that one out today.
Sometimes I can't even remember, Ahsoka's name. I mean, like,
Yeah.
what? Yeah, Morgan Elsbeth. So Ahsoka's talking to Morgan and says, where is Thrawn? And you see like the Seventh Fleet symbol on some of the things there. So the problem with him not getting his fleet back is then, is Morgan still reporting to Thrawn? Are the Seventh Fleet, like droids and stuff there, are they still Thrawn's? Or was the remnant of the Seventh Fleet dispatched out everywhere and fell apart? Morgan has her own little, corner of the galaxy. We don't know, but I don't know. What do you think? Would Thrawn get his entire fleet back, or I don't know.
Yeah, like there has to be some kind of twist to it, because it's not like you could just walk around, pick up a fleet, like just decide I want this back, I'm gonna get it. And in Star Wars, like the answer when you have like the ragtag guys are like, hey everybody, come on, like right now we're reading Duel of the Fates, and it's just like, hey, we found all this stuff, everybody come fly the ships, and he doesn't have that luxury, he's an imperialist fascist, and
Right.
so he's, whatever he has, he's going to have to take. So it makes me think if he gets something, he's going to have to get in the mix with some other types of people. But I also like have a hard time imagining him, like when you get down to like these like evil space pirates or something like that. I don't see him taking them over either. He could be as cunning as he wants. The pirates are just gonna like slit his throat eventually. You know what I mean? They're just gonna be savages, or at least you would think, anyways. So I have no idea, like, how any of this like ends up playing out, because I think that there's just other pieces of the puzzle they've created that we have like no idea about at the moment.
Well, and as far as getting space whaled out, where did they space whale to? And they've been gone for 8 years. What have they been doing? I like to think that they were space whaled to the Ascendancy, and that Ezra has been fighting with Thrawn against the Grisk. And when Ahsoka, and this is just Santa's headcanon here. Like, this is just stuff I've invented out of my brain. I think it could all be just made up, make believe, and none of it come to fruition in the actual story. But if they were taken to the Ascendancy, Ezra's been helping fight back the Grisk, because the Grisk are invaders. They're hostiles. You could end up with Ezra and Thrawn fighting alongside one another, without Ezra turning dark side, right? We don't have dark side Ezra. We don't have Sith Ezra, nothing like that. They're fighting back an invasion fleet of the Grisk. And when Ahsoka finds Ezra, it'll be there. And it'll be in that context. And she's not going to know that Thrawn and Ezra are working together. She's not going to know any of that. And it could very well be she meets Thrawn the same way she met Din Djarin, by trying to kill him, right? Like, it could be quite a hostile encounter. Then that Ezra has to say, no, wait a second. We're fighting this bigger evil, and he's on our side, or we're on his side, whatever that might be. So does that take care of Heir to the Empire storyline happening in one way or another? Who knows? I don't know how they're going to incorporate that, in what context.
That's the Heir to the Empire thing is, I think, getting a little out of hand, to be honest. I'm seeing it everywhere. They're soft rebooting Heir to the Empire. It's happening, you guys. Here we go. And I'm like, I don't know. I think like they're just doing callbacks, lots of callbacks, and we're gonna get all of those elements. I would not mind, totally wouldn't mind if they do it. Like, but yeah, it's running. If they didn't do this on purpose, wow, you guys messed up, because now you kind of have to do it.
Right. And I tend to agree more with you. And if they're going to tell an heir to the empire adaptation of some sort, it won't be with Thrawn. It won't be coming back. It'll just be Palpatine's contingency plan, making clones of himself, using Mount Tantus. It takes me a minute now to think of what that mountain's real name is.
Mm-hmm.
And you know whose fault that is.
Is it Meg's fault?
It's Meg's fault. It's Meg's fault. Of course it's Meg's fault, because now there's another word that comes in my head that's not Tantus.
Meg.
No. I know. If you missed it, I'm not going to say it. You missed it, boy. I tell you, she renamed it. And let's just say there are some birds that have the same sort of name that also.
That's our Meg.
I tell you what, she just let it go during our live stream on Saturday. You're doing your next script reading. It'll be this afternoon, right?
Yeah. We start every episode by briefly covering whatever the news of the day is if nothing huge has happened, and then we get right onto it. I think we maybe have 1 or 2 more episodes until we're done. And then I'm going to edit it up into one big video of just the whole thing. And it's ridiculous, by the way, but it's fun.
Well, you guys, like my live streams with Meg, aren't very good at staying on point.
No. It's supposed to be read a scene and analyze, but we are unfortunately probably watched too much Family Guy during college or something and can't focus. So
yeah, and I don't know if Rob has attention deficit or what. I mean, like he just he takes off. It's fantastic. It's great. It's been a lot of fun to watch. John 42 asks, how did they survive after the windows of the bridge were broken? Well, we know that they have like shield, like they constantly raise hangar bays and stuff open to the vacuum of space, but the vacuum of space doesn't come in. And so it'll be very easy to have a fail-safe on a bridge where, should the windows break, that vacuum is still maintained through those shields.
Well, remember in Revenge of the Sith too, when the windows break, eventually those like things come down. Maybe that eventually happens. Leia survives out in space for a time, so that could explain Ezra's exposure, but I don't know about Thrawn's.
Ooh, Darth Talon. Yeah. That'd be good. Yeah, birds. Yeah, Mount Birdies. Let's put it that way. Mount Birdies. Yeah. Meg. That's all I can say.
Oh, and I hope you're feeling better, Meg, or you recover quickly.
Yeah, I hope so. There's all kinds of places for it. Yeah. Oh, yeah, John. That's convenient. Well, that's the way it is, John.
Yeah. It's space melodrama. What are you gonna do?
Right.
I mean, that's the like. I will say, like, Star Wars is so defined by "I am your father," and that's ridiculous. It's great. It's fantastic. I love it, but it's the most soap opera thing in the world, and we love it. So.
Well, I'm just saying, it's defined by your father, and the courtship of Grogu's father is coming.
Right.
That's Santa's prediction. We got the courtship of.
Well, let me ask you this: if we do follow that plot thread or that idea that Thrawn and Ezra, the enemy of my enemy is my friend concept, so to speak, and they're both stopping this other thing from coming in and just destroying everything that they love where they're from. At some point, you're going to expect Thrawn to double cross, right? I mean, that's kind of what you are always waiting for. So you kind of end up with two realistic outcomes. One is Thrawn double crosses and Ahsoka gets him. Something like that. The other one is he ends up realizing that he's been a bad person and he changes, like, that real swarmy guy. I don't know if you watch horror films, but the remake of Dawn of the Dead, there's this like real swarmy guy, right? in it. And like I could kind of see Thrawn being that kind of guy who ends up sort of coming around. But if he comes, would fans ever accept a Thrawn who comes around and changes and quits?
Well, here's the big issue is that a lot of fans don't have a full knowledge of Thrawn through canon.
Mm-hmm.
And they only see Thrawn as the conquering kind of empire, heir to the empire strategist who is trying
4D
to
chess.
Yeah. Yeah, who's trying to take over the empire for his own rule. But the Thrawn that we see in the novels in the Ascendancy, before he's part of the empire, even after he starts coming into the empire, is one that's focused on preserving. There you go. Thank you, Jason. Preserving the Ascendancy, right? So he's trying to preserve the Ascendancy. That's his focus.
Right.
The reason he is working with Palpatine is to learn and to get those assets to be able to go back and fight against the Vong, which now the Grisk. That's his motivation. His motivation all along, and all he has done, is to preserve the Ascendancy and to preserve life, to save life. He values that. A lot of people don't know that Thrawn.
Right.
They just don't know him. And so my question has been, would people even accept that Thrawn without feeling like, well, they retconned or they softened or they, cut away what we know as Thrawn?
Yeah, see, and that's where it's sort of like the inconsistency of the character's depiction in various formats. Because when you watch Star Wars Rebels, you don't get the picture of a guy who is trying to has this greater good in mind. He's just like, ooh, those rebels, the whole time.
Exactly.
And yeah, so that's going to be. I mean, but I am for the more complex version of Thrawn. The idea that he's not just this sociopathic dude who's like wants to show off for the Empire. Like that's a pretty boring character in the big picture.
I agree. And X-Wing, I don't know. X-Wing and I have been chatting. I don't know if you've read the new Thrawn novels. And I know he was talking about starting to read the High Republic. But if you haven't read the Thrawn novels, I would caution you, read those, skip the High Republic, just knowing who you are, knowing what your interests and where they lie. I would strongly encourage reading those 5 novels and let the High Republic continue to develop before you go that direction. If you've already read them, okay, it's fine to dip your feet in. But if you haven't, I strongly encourage go that way first. I think you would enjoy them.
Yeah, in terms of like bigger canon stuff, like
yes,
if you were to rate all of the canon books and you hadn't read any of it, the High Republic stuff is like sort of in the lower middle for me.
Yep. Yeah. I'm interested in High Republic in that I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And when somebody dies, I'm like, whoa, didn't see that coming. Because I don't know that they live, right? Like none of these characters are in any Star Wars that we know. So there does seem to be some weight to the stories, especially when one significant character does die. Mm-hmm. And I was like, whoa, didn't see that coming. Right? I thought something else was going to happen. So those have been enjoyable for that reason.
And it has Yaddle, so there you go.
And it has Yaddle, and she speaks normal. She doesn't speak Yoda speak.
Yeah,
which has implications to Grogu when he starts speaking.
I'm just assuming that like Yoda grew up on a different planet and learned English later. That's how it happened.
No, and Will, I agree with you. When Ahsoka asks where is Thrawn, it's because she's looking for Ezra. That's what I always saw it as. When she was asking where's Thrawn, I thought, well, because she knows like if she finds Thrawn, she finds Ezra. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, and I mean, there's so many possibilities for like how that's gonna go, which is something I love, but I want the answer. I need the answer to it as soon as possible. And it's because like for all we know, Thrawn is out there having space adventures with a new fleet that he somehow magically got. And Ezra's in a prison cell with super long hair and a big old beard going like, is somebody going to come and save me? You know, I mean,
Joris Sabayoth, right? Ezra's going full Joris Sabayoth.
Yeah, I mean, it's completely possible, you know. I mean, and by the way, I ran a scoop. What was her name? Morgan Elsbeth. That was going to be Jamie Lee Curtis for a time. It was all the way down to like they thought it was going to happen, and then another film that she had, which was I think one of the Halloween things or something, took her away from it, and that character was gonna live, and it was going to be Jamie Lee Curtis. I keep wondering if we're going to see Jamie Lee Curtis show up in one of these other ones, because it wasn't like she just said like, "Oh, I don't like Star Wars," or they were like, "Never mind." It was simply it didn't work. So I kind of have a feeling that I'm keeping tabs on the Jamie Lee Curtis thread. Is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, that's fantastic. I had not heard that, but it would be great to see her. And we don't know that Morgan is dead. I mean, it's a mystery. Did Ahsoka kill her, or just get her to, acquiesce and leave?
Yeah,
we don't know.
She's like, I'm Anakin's apprentice. She cuts off her hands, Dooku style.
Dooku style. Excellent.
Never know, man. No,
you just don't. You don't. Yeah, maybe Yoda's special needs. We just never knew. His short bus wasn't because of his height. That's right. You can't say that stuff now. Right?
Not touching that.
You can't say that stuff now.
I get enough grief. What are you doing to me, dude? No.
Right. Very good. Well, Jason, I want to thank you for your time. And I've enjoyed talking with you today. Thanks for coming on short notice. Like I just sent you a message, say, hey, if you get a chance, drop on in. And
yeah, I was almost like, oh, somebody's direct messaging me from there to just ask me a question. I was like, I'll look at it in a minute. And I was like, wait, that's never happened before.
Yeah, no, it's great. I enjoyed it. And you guys, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, and 9 p.m. in the UK. Go catch MakingStarWars.net. And you think you'll finish it today or no?
I hope so, but I no promises. I'm going to go with there's like 2 more. I'm going to go with there's 2 more.
I was going to say, if I'm taking bets, I'm going over.
Yeah.
Over under that they finish today. I'm taking the over.
I think 1 more, but I bet it's 2 more. But I'm going to be wrong, and it's going to be 3 more.
Right. I'm taking the over. And then, it's over 1. Yeah, they finish it in 1. I'm definitely no. I don't think so. If you finish it today.
And thank you for knowing all the time zones of my show, because I didn't. Thank you.
Look at me, math. Oh, I can.
Me no ad.
There you go. There you go. Well, thanks, everybody for being here. I had not planned on doing a live stream today, and I recorded the review of the Heir to the Empire, Luke Skywalker, and Yissa Lamiri, little lizard there. I'd done a review of that, did the release, and thought, well, that was going to be my content today. But then this story broke, Star Wars only. If you missed the Tatooine show last night, go check that out.
Yeah.
And then Jason put a video out, and Meg put a video out. We were able to talk about it today. And then Jason, of course, you'll be able to talk about it a little bit later on your show. Yeah. Really enjoyed it, everybody. Hope you all have a great day. We expect to be back probably tomorrow talking about the gallery, and then Friday with Star Wars Meg as we do our week roundup.
And Meg's strong enough to pull the ears off of Gundark, right? Right, Meg? All right.
Exactly.
She's getting better.
Exactly. She'll be fully healthy and in her usual form on Friday. We our prayers are with you, Meg. Take care. So I keep forgetting to do this, but we do have an outro that I'm going to play. So here we go.